right, people, welcome to the Luango297. Today we're gonna have Marc Erasmus here with us, straightly from the Netherlands right now. I don't know your location yet, but you're gonna tell us. He's born here in Aruba, also an artist. From my knowing, started as a DJ, right?
Right.
And right now he's developing himself into other art forms. So Erasmus, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us today at the Lango podcast. I would like to
Thank you for
start.
having.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, thank you for showing up. To support. So I would like
whenever.
to ask you firstly. Tell the people who you are, where you come from, introduce yourself, and tell us about your current location, where you're at right now.
All right, for sure. Well, my name is Marc Era. My full name is Marc Erasmus, but my artist name is Marc Era. And grew up on Aruba. I was born on Aruba. I grew up to two parents, both musically involved. My father's like a DJ from the 80s, 90s, 70s. My mother's a singer, and she also composes music and arranges songs. However, neither of them had no musical experience, or in a sense, musical training. They have musical experience without a doubt, but no musical training. And I grew up with that, a lot of that natural by ear, learning your music by ear, learning what you like by ear, listening to a lot of music. And right now, I grew up uh, on Aruba, lived a long time. I think I was in my 21st year when I was 21. I moved to Holland, living in Zwolle on the outskirts, and I really love it here. It's very quiet, it's very relaxing. Here, life in Netherlands has been quite interesting. Lots of different experiences that have, really added to my art form, not just music, but writing itself and just painting for myself. But the writing more so has a lot more raw material of my experiences, more so than the music, but together, they have something special. And so that's where I am right now. And that's who I am.
Thank you for sharing that with us because coming from Aruba, like, can you tell us like what inspired you? What type of music styles do you find here in Aruba, or what type of things you was inspired from living here out here?
Yeah. So Aruba, I'm someone growing up, I had like this strange relationship with the local culture. I'm just gonna be honest about it because growing up, you fit in certain areas, and certain areas you don't fit in, and then certain aspects of the culture you love so deeply, and certain aspects you don't understand why it's that way. And music, on the side of music, a lot of the local folklore, traditional music, I had like this sort of love-hate relationship where I love this essence or this flavor or this touch in it, but at the same time, the sound of it is like, oh, that's old people music type of feeling. But then as you grow, you kind of like lean more on the gist, the essence, and ignore those other comments you used to hold when you were younger. But that's a huge source of inspiration for me on Aruba. That eclectic sound we have, even in the folklore music, even in the all the musics that we have this sort of something that we have with it. This sort of thing we carry with it, and that little spark. Whenever I find it in whatever we are creating, it's always like this reroute back home of like, oh, I got to go back to that. I got to go back to that. Just that feeling. And whenever I do, and I go create music, there's always that. I don't know why, but it feels like that, even though these sound completely different. Is that spiritual feeling, I guess, always from the roots really carried me to where I am right now. And I have to say, without a doubt, is hip hop. As I grew up, in middle school, Mavo days was hip hop. A lot of Nas, Illmatic. That was one of the first early exposures to hip hop, was Nas, Illmatic. And I love that Nas, Illmatic was released in the 1998. That's, I believe, the same year I was born, or around that time. But I love it, and there's just something to Illmatic by Nas that carried me through middle school to high school, and then expanded my, ear to Mobb Deep, Tupac. You can go all over the classics, but the style, their delivery, their thought process, they're just who they are, and how not only that influencing generations, but now how we're coming full circle back to this boom bap era. It's like resurfacing, and I love hearing that, and I love seeing that, and having those, I would say, the folklore roots and then the hip hop roots that we were encountered with is like this powerhouse of, like, get at it with the music.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. That that era is something special, especially in hip hop, no? It inspired me as well, all of that music in that era specifically inspired me as well. So, but I know you started, and I want to make sure that I'm correct. You started as a DJ. So
Correct.
how did you develop from doing DJ, and then because I know now you're into rapping and you also produce music. So tell us about that journey. How did that came from?
I feel that journey, is something special. And for like a couple of years of my life, I was like confused which am I, DJ or an artist or a producer. But what I learned, like DJing has taught me so many valuable lessons and wisdom as an art form itself, and then lessons and, as you can call it, business moves, lessons in whatever area. But the wisdom I learned from DJing is the just listening. Like, it's stupid, but just listening, like simply listening. And then in simply listening, I was like, how is that made? Why is that way? And at the time that I was asking those questions, it was with so many different types of music. So I didn't have like a focus of what I wanted to study at that time. Shifting from DJing to music production was this phase of experimentation. I had access to FL Studios, so then I just started like, okay, I'm hearing that pattern and that rhythm. Let me try and replicate that pattern and rhythm. And for me, I'm a person who I'm very like not stuck on patterns, but I can notice them so easily, and like it's just something about my nature. And my mother had the same thing. And so based on that, I just started practicing experimentation in a sense that, like, I would develop my own principles to experiment with. My principles of experimentation is like, I love always having acoustic elements by my side. Just it could be anything. It could be the silliest or useless thing, but then it has this purpose. But transitioning over to production, I think it was a 1 to 2 year period of just experimenting and experimenting and experimenting. Even though at the time I was fixated on what was the contemporary beats, like the pop dance beats. However, it simply gave me a focus or an outlet to learn about music production in of itself. And then when you start to figure out who are the people producing those tunes, you got to start to look into the names, and you start to look at the network, and you start to see it's actually a lot more people involved in the whole production process. And of those people, you'll find your favorite writers, you'll find your favorite producers, you'll find those who produced beats on your favorite records, and what's so not. So I feel like job transitioning was more also studying my ear, and then studying cultural aspects, studying, oh, who's the producer, who made it, why, what's so not, where can you find anything about it that you can ingest, and it becomes part of you and you contribute to it. So I think that's the best way I could describe transitioning from DJing to music production, is that phase of experimentation, and that lesson of learning from DJing, just listening to the music, just, and whatever you catch or what catches you is where you start to like do your work. For example, with a simple drum pattern, you know. So I would say it like that.
Yeah, so you had like this amazing journey, transitioning and also getting inspired and never limit yourself to one thing in that sense, right? So
Correct.
I like that. I like that. I think that is important. Never limit yourself. Go and discover what talents you also have. In a sense. And I wanted to ask because now you're in Holland. Like, how did that transition go? That are you working with new materials? Do you still have the same materials over there? Do you still use what type of materials do you use actually, right, to
You
produce?
know, it's a wonderful question because when I was 15 and 16, I was very, focused on I need to get that type of speaker set, that audio interface, that keyboard, this or that. And of course, that is important. You need those specific tools at given times. But my focus at the time was like, oh, I need it to make so and so, rather than having the vision of so and so in my mind and then getting to the point of making it. But then you learn. What I learned is I work the best when everything is stripped away from me. So like, okay, give me 2 or 5 hours in like a big studio with everything, or a minimal setup, or like a setup with some stuff, but then take that all away from me. Just give me my pen and paper and my computer or phone, and let me just get at something, right? At the most raw. I love to parallel it. I love to make a comparison with when in the Rocky movies, the guy is in the scene and he's at the last breath. He's like almost gonna lose it, but then coming through eventually. And it didn't take anything other than that will, that deeper will, right? So for me, it's like that. You have the creativity, you have everything generating, you have the tools and everything, but that will, if that will is gone, then there's nothing. And then there's a scene he says, if I don't believe in myself, then nothing matters, right? And it's such a powerful thing. Even the most simplest thing is quite powerful. So for me, transitioning and the journey so far, I'd say, well, the art form. Mi mente blank hong jave. But what edit it, toch?
No problem, no problem. But in a sense, from like,
Yeah,
I can imagine like when you are in Aruba, the
right.
music the music industry is different. It's especially when we talk about
Correct.
hip hop, about producing, is mostly underground. We know some people, we know people, but it's not like broadcasted. But I know in the Netherlands there is like these big platforms, and there's a lot of more opportunities to get your materials, to go into studios, to do all of that. So that I want to know from you, like, are you going to that decision right now? Are you going into studio in Netherlands? How are you experience the whole transition from Aruba to the Netherlands as a music producer or as an artist in a sense?
Exactly. Not true. Well, here, yes, I'm working a lot more, in the studio with other artists. And for example, I'm working right now with Jay McKenna. He's also from Aruba, also born and raised. And what we're working on, is different things, different eclectic stuff. And then the life from Aruba to Netherlands is quite different. I would say I'm enjoying the process here a lot, because not only is it, going to a studio session 3 or 4 times a week, or maybe even once a week, but it's also this on the go feeling of like, I'll have my MacBook and I'll have my microphone and I'll have my phone and my notepad, and then we'll just pop up in the park. You record with background noise and everything, just that raw moment, and then on the go next spot, and just do this sort of spontaneous around, going around recording, and then jumping up again in the next studio, going at some friends' house, setting it up in the sense that we can record there, just using blankets and pillows and everything to cover extra noise, and just recording this really, I guess you could say, nomadic feeling to like creating music. And then at the same time, with everything, just not only the experiences, but the aesthetic of Netherlands itself, the cities, and who you meet around on the street, all that stuff adds to this experience as an artist of, on Aruba, while you meet so many different people from so many different places, and a huge eclectic mix of just, bang bang powerhouse. And the Netherlands, you also find that in its own context. I found, I met people from, Yemen and Vietnam, and then from Korea and South Africa, these combinations of people and their roots and origins, that when you meet with them, it doesn't feel strange. You feel like you get each other quite a lot, because there's this is sort of gist, right? You just connect on that gist. And as an artist, that experience has been quite wonderful, in the studio, out of the studio, and also at events. I love to go to open mics, poetry open mics, and stuff like that. The just the quiet, close, niche stuff. That stuff is like the most richest for me, And there, that experience, compared to Aruba, well, not even to compare, but to put next to, or to look at both, it's so, I always keep finding so many rich stuff in both experiences. And then Aruba would be like a growing up one, and then Holland would be like, oh, I'm turning into adult now, I'm growing up now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine that, man. I can imagine that. 'Cause, but I think Holland has a lot of opportunities. Me myself, when I used to live there, I wanted to work with everybody. In a sense, because you have that opportunity and you use it. Never be scared of using that. That's my tip I can give everybody. Just try to work with people. If you click, go work with them. You learn from it. So I wanted to ask you, like I asked other artists, can you really live from making music? Is that your aspiration? What is your future goals right now, doing music or being an artist?
You know, um, I'm gonna just I'm gonna throw it out there. I'm gonna make a random prediction. Like I made nobody knows I made this prediction years ago, but when I think it was 2013, Afrobeat was nothing in the Western Hemisphere, right? Nobody was here listening to Afrobeat. And I said, Afrobeat is gonna take over, right? And then here we are, 2023, 10 years later, and Afrobeat is in every single corner of the world. I'm saying, like people said, DJs are going to take over the platforms and the stadiums and what's not. And it happened. I believe music producers, and especially this new generation, are going to be taking over a different kind of environment. And I'm saying that that environment is not just, oh, the online world and what's not. No, it's in part of the in part it's the online world, and then the other part of it is this sort of virtual reality sphere, live streaming, Twitch platforms, where they can be streaming and showing their music, and people are just involved in the process. I'm seeing it pop up a lot more music producers are switching over to streaming. But the magic I see in it is not just, oh, you're streaming and you're making money. You have a community. And I believe community is what allows a circulation of getting paid, because you're contributing and there's an exchange. And I think you could get paid in this day and age as a music producer. Where I live in Holland, I think it's more possible than elsewhere, right? But I know people in Brazil, regardless of their circumstance, have set up sufficient mediums online and the virtual world to be like, you know what, I can possibly live off of this, right? Of course, there's different sort of limitations compared to Aruba in Brazil or other places, and Holland in the Brazil and Aruba. But the point would be that what's to come next for payment or surviving off of music or living off of music is that people just simply focus on, you know what, I'm going to do this 100%. I'm going to stick by it. And imagine when you actually stick by it, it's easier to like, oh, that's how I could survive, or that's how I could live. Or if you're like trying to be half in, half out, you're like, how am I gonna pay for that bill? Or how am I gonna pay for that? Or how am I gonna it's true. But then at the same time, when you go full in, then it's gonna be like, then you have a perspective from that central point where you're standing, and you're like, oh wait, I'm making like 50 beats a week. What can I do with these 50 beats, for example? Why not record yourself as you're making those 50 beats and then start posting that? Why don't you take those 50 beats, send it to an artist can spit, and let them spit an EP for you if it's possible. Do a collab EP. Like for example, the guy, the Alchemist, he makes some collab EPs on collab projects with other rappers. He just makes all the beats, all the rappers just rap on it. It's not a old idea, it's not a new idea. It's been around for a while, but those things are gonna slowly take off more. More of the indie side, more of the underground is gonna be taking a grand over the overground. And then we find this sort of cultural shift, in my opinion, where the back in the day they say the underground hip hop became like the mainstream on what's so not, and we find all these figures such as 50 Cent and Diddy and so forth that they say, oh, they went mainstream, what's so not, as people may argue. But the intention is to see that culturally the shift happens the more people congregate around one thing. And I believe people are going to come around more to the indie because the mainstream is just so mainstream. It's just as it is becoming this more reiteration. And in my opinion, it always seems to become relevant again when it takes something that is unheard of. And the unheard of is always the underground. It's always the unseen scene. It's always the people creating that one thing that you've never heard, but you know you need, you know. And a lot of those people are going to be coming out of India and Africa. That's what we're going to be seeing in the next 20 years, I believe. But as
Damn,
in,
you're making
yeah,
prediction already, man.
it
You
may happen, it may not. If it not happen, I think in the end people still should still stick by it. In the end, whether you make money or not. Like for example, I make some money off of it. I don't make a lot, but I enjoy it throughout, right? That if I know that, oh, you know, it's this amount of pay, but it's this amount of labor of love, it's equal for me. If it's not amount of labor of love, even though it's a great amount of pay, it's like questionable. But you know, it's up to each person. I do believe it's possible, and I do believe it's going to be shifting in more than one ways that we're just seeing now.
all right, all right, all right. That's a nice thing to hear, you know. So I wanted to ask you, like, what type of tips do you have for especially inspiring young people here in Aruba or abroad, whatever? What tips do you have for them if they want to go into music production right now at the moment?
Right now, at the moment, you know, I do have like like rules at the top of my head. You know, one is community. Community is everything, and not having community so you can have success. Community is like part of it in of itself. It's like the root foundation of success. It's not, you know, you get it or you somehow acquire it. Community, having group networking is what they would say in business, but right, I'm talking about community. And that community, it could be anywhere. It could be on TikTok, it could be on Twitter, it could be in your neighborhood. Community is always more than two people that's willing enough to be dedicated in believing in more than one or two things, that is self-benefiting, that is self-progressive, I would say, at least. And so community, having a friend, you know, a brother or sister, having a random person that you have a good exchange with, you know, even a pen pal, a good exchange about whatever it could be artistic wise, is great to have around because it's built that sense of community. You're not just a lone wolf in this. Nobody is, because if you know, they say in Papiamento, you know, abo sota canta toca baila. You know, you sing, you dance, you play by yourself, but it's not like that at all. And I would say also practice your ear. Music theory is like this bonus, but your ear is more than just being able to recognize melody or melodies, is being able to recognize, like that, just simply being able to recognize in listening to like your attention, like listening to how you're listening. Pick someone, anyone, unknown or well known, and study them, but don't become them. Study them, but don't become them. And as for genres, you know, study it, but don't mold into it. Shape it with your influence, you know, shape it with your ideas. Uh, Ideas, you know, preserving ideas, voice note everything. Voice note the most simplest, ridiculous sounds, ideas. It may not make sense, but you're doing yourself a service when you're letting your gears run as you're supposed to. Imagine you're biking and you put a pencil in the gear. No, you're gonna crash, right? So don't put a pencil in your gear by not recording your ideas. Record your ideas on paper or on voice. Have the flow, just keep going. It could be something that makes no sense. It doesn't matter. That thing wants to come forward, so let it. Experiment a bit on any instrument. You don't need to know it. What you're gonna be listening for is something melodic, rhythmic, expressive, articulate something. You gotta just find something while you're playing. It's about just playing with the instrument. Listening to different genres is like a must, right? Like I grew up on listening to like so many different genres, but when you're listening, it's more like you're not listening to find what's great about the genre. You're finding greatness in each, and likewise, it reflects the greatness in your own. So it's this sort of reflective position. And I would say, as a last piece of advice, learning is at your pace. Really, simply just meditate on that. Learning is at your pace. So there's no too early or too late. Just learning is at your pace. Hold it at that, and as you keep going, you'll see everything makes sense because you're never done too early or too late. You're just learning at your pace.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, man. That's amazing tips, man. Thank you. I think that we are ending the podcast today, but before that, I want you to tell us what type of things can we expect from you coming up. Like I know that you are dropping some music out there, so tell us about how we can find you. Where are you going to drop Are you going to drop new music? What can we expect?
New music, yeah, where you can find me. You can find me everywhere online at Mark This Era. So that's Mark with a say. It's Mark This Era. That's everywhere online. And new music, well, I'm working right now on a lot of lyrical stuff. I would have to say I give thanks to the hip hop, spoken word, poetry, a lot of reggae music, a lot of you know, Arabic poetry, Indian poetry. So what I create, the inspiration from there. I don't know what I call what I create, but what it's coming forward is a lot of something that is spoken word with hip hop roots, jazz instrumentation, something that's a lot like I don't know how to put an example on it, but that's coming forward with a couple artists from here and a couple people from Aruba. That's coming forward on my end, lyrical production stuff, and I'm excited to share it with everyone because I feel it's something special, both in English and Papiamento, and I got like this one Spanish tune I'm just playing around with. But that's it. Excited to see what's coming next, as likewise from everyone else in the community. So I'm always watching.
All right. Nice to hear that, man. So I want to thank you for the interview. I think this was very nice to talk about what you do, because I've been following you, but I don't know what's going on, Netherlands. I know you went there, so I'm happy to connect with you and that we can share a little bit of what you're doing right now and how your journey is going as an artist. So I want to thank you for the interview and hopefully we can connect back here in Aruba. We can do something here in Aruba one time again.
Likewise, December is right there, yo.
Okay,
Hey,
okay. Ready?
you wait till.
All right. So thank you.